Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. As part of our customer success initiative, today is the 12th in a series of webinars that we aim to deliver on a monthly basis between product training, product updates, tips and tricks to help maximize your use of the platform. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation or have some feedback, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel. We'll answer as many as we can at the end. If we can't get to all questions, we'll be sure to follow up separately by email after the webinar, but hopefully we get through them all. All are welcome. My name is Chris Dunphy. I'm a Customer Success Manager here in Aphix. I've been with the company for the past 6 years, going on 7. I previously led the support team here in Aphix and now work in our customer success department. Today we'll be walking through our JavaScript API product and giving a brief demo of it and what it can do for you in your business, along with some of the practicalities of it, how it can work for you, what is it, and I suppose how it can kind of automate your business and make your customers, more importantly, sell smarter and sell more products for you as an extension of your business. Just before that, I do have a guest on today's webinar to talk about our up and coming Experlogix Elevate conference briefly. Today, I'll be joined briefly with Eleanor Walsh, who is our VP of Global Marketing in Experlogix. Hey, Eleanor, thanks for joining.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you on. What is Elevate? Can you give us an idea of the event? Maybe give us a bit of an overview or an idea.
Yeah, exactly that. So so those of you that don't know me, I now run the marketing team at Experlogix, but before Experlogix, I was head of sales and marketing at Aphix. So I'm very much a digital commerce person. So Elevate is our company conference, and hopefully some of you have had some emails from us. You would have seen on social. We're doing a big push out at the moment because we've launched a particular special website actually run on digital commerce to launch the ticket sales. So the conference is primarily for clients, customers. We also have some partners that will be attending as well. And it's really a chance for you to learn more about the products that we've got, not just digital commerce, the document automation and CPQ, but probably primarily for digital commerce people, like really understand the way the product is going, the roadmap. There's a chance to get hands-on with some of the software in jam sessions, as small breakout sessions, and as well as sort of keynotes as well. And we'll ultimately be focusing on the role of AI within our products as well. So it's a real chance to network, to meet the people that you chat to on these Teams meetings all the time, find other people, find other users, but really maximize the investment and the benefits of using one of the Experlogix products. So I'll just quickly, I've got a couple of slides, but the most important thing is probably, I'm sharing my wrong screen, aren't I? Show screen. It's ages since I've done a go-to meeting. Is that it? That's it, isn't it?
That's the one.
So we've done some special branding for this because it's going to be such an exciting event. And here is the URL for the site, which has got an awful lot more information on about the event. So it's elevate.experlogix.com. So as I was saying, it's about getting close to us. It's a conference that Experlogix was running every 2 years, but it hasn't run for the last 6 years because 2020 and 2022 were cancelled because of the pandemic. It's a mixture of keynotes, breakout sessions, jam sessions, client stories, one-to-ones, roadmaps. We have discounts for group tickets as well. So if more than one of you want to come to the event, there's a special price. Spouse tickets as well if you want to bring a partner just to enjoy the hotel and the scenery and join us for all the drinks and hospitality. And the reason that we're really pushing it right now is there's an early bird ticket offer which runs to the 16th of February. So you might have seen some of our social out here on LinkedIn, and yeah, we'd really encourage you to look at the site and if you're going to be coming, buy the tickets now. It is in Utah. It's in a place called Park City in the mountains. We have 2 hotels with reservations there. So we have the Chateau and the Lodge. It's an absolutely beautiful place. There's loads of outdoor activities, hiking, mountain biking. There's a spa as well, and we also have got preferential rates for days either side of the conference. So what a lot of people do is take some extra days, you know, make a real break of it. Because I appreciate for anyone from UK and Ireland, it is a long way to go, and you'd be looking at flights into Salt Lake City. So really, if you have any questions on this at all, please email elevate@experlogix.com, and me or one of the team will pick them up, or come to me direct. I'm fine with that. And also have a look at the website. You should find all the information there around the agenda, the hotels, the tickets. And yeah, keep watching it because it's going to get updated quite a lot as we move forward as well. And we'd really, really love to see a great digital commerce contingent over at the event. So yeah, hopefully I will see you, if not before, but in Park City in Utah in June. Thanks, Chris.
No problem. That's great, Eleanor. It was good to get that information. I think probably a few people have been wondering what's the story there recently. So no, that's good to get the lowdown on it. And yeah, thanks for coming on.
No problem. I'll hand
Awesome.
back.
Perfect. Okay. That's grand. Sure, we'll continue on with today's session. Thanks very much for that, Eleanor. For those of you who have joined in our last few sessions, or indeed any of our sessions kind of from January last year onwards, we've demoed quite a number of things. We've gone full circle through a lot of things. We've looked at our new management interface, visual page builder tools. We've delivered lots of training sessions. Hopefully they've been of benefit to you. If you still need to take a look at those or at any of those, they're up on our Aphix Assist documentation hub under webinars. Feel free to take a look at them and download them. They're up on YouTube. The only downside is you have to listen to me for an hour, but they will hopefully give you some info so you can get some good use out of the platform. In some of the most recent webinars, we've looked at sales rep, how it can work for your business. We've looked at shipping services. That was the last one in November. We didn't do a webinar in December just because it was quite a short month. The shipping services covered how you might get the best usability out of that module. This session is going to be covering our JavaScript API service product. So as the title suggests of the webinar, this will help your own customers sell your products easier. For merchants, like most of our customers, you got a large catalog. It's populated with multiple customer prices, which is kind of our USP, in that you have multiple customers, they have their own specific pricing, and you know, you also have product content, multiple images, products that are supported in multiple categories, data specs, etc., etc., etc. And you've been populating that content over a broad, long period of time. For your customers, periodically, the reason for doing this webinar on this product is just to kind of answer some questions, and I'm sure there'll be a lot at the end, and I'm happy to run through them. But some of those questions would be, you might have as a wholesaler or B2B wholesaler, your customers are probably primarily retailers and may struggle to keep up with the content that you might have. If they're buying small numbers of products off you, then it's a bit of an easier feat. But if you have a catalog that broadly encompasses nearly everything that they do or sell, it's very hard to keep up with images, to keep up with pricing, to keep up with categorization. It just becomes a minefield, and then things get messy when they're ordering products off you and you don't have it in stock, or they're sending you an order and it's the wrong price, or it's the wrong images, or whatever the case might be. The JavaScript API allows your customers' own e-commerce site, so like a non-Experlogix site, to connect to a feed that is ran at scheduled intervals to automate their own retail catalog. This will allow your customer to retrieve their up-to-date price, the product info, the products that you want them to be able to sell, the categories, stock, currency codes, all that sort of stuff that will mean that when eventually they start placing orders into your ERP system, that there's as little human intervention as possible in your part to have with your customer, so that everything just runs a lot more seamlessly. As I mentioned just there briefly, there is a function as well, apart from retrieving all of your products and your categories, there's a function where you can place an order directly into your ERP system. We'll run through the kind of practicalities of that as we run along. So yeah, we'll be walking through the API and the practical reasons of why it may be a benefit to your business. It's not for everyone. Maybe because your catalog is maybe a bit smaller, a bit tidier. Maybe there's not really much need to kind of provide this to your customers. But certainly anything over maybe 2,000, 1,500 to 2,000 products, I think straight away, it's something that if your customers you use regularly, it's then definitely a benefit. Accessing the API, viewing the products and categories and how they're presented, the overview of the systems that it can connect to, and placing an order directly into an ERP, and just a brief overview of like support and documentation, and kind of the flow of what occurs when you approach me or our sales team or our support team to obtain an API license. What actually is the flow there, and what you can be, what's your, to give you the to answer your expectations, or to provide rather answers to what your expectations might be. The benefits of and takeaways for today will be, as I said, if the API is a tool that can offer benefit to you and your customers, whether it's you taking out a license or licenses on behalf of your customer. Maybe they're a customer that, for the cost of the license for the API, what that might be, based off of how much return business you're getting from your customer, is it worthwhile just, managing, absorbing that cost? Or maybe if it's something that your own customer is crying out for, you can be the provider, the middleman. You can just kind of sit back and let your customer become our customer, so that they can take a license on themselves. Either way is okay. At least you're not the bad guy in that sort of regard. How to make your large catalog more automated for your users to resell, and cutting down on the need for that manual data input. Like I mentioned a moment ago, having things just flow freely from system to system means that there's less of a chance of customer service representatives in your own business having to talk to somebody, tell them that the product is out of stock, or that the price has changed, or that they have to send them the file with the data sheet and tell them exactly what the product has because they missed something when they were copying and pasting it from your own site. Messy things like that. Understand what is happening on a technical level in the API. I don't want to bore you to tears, but it's really just it's to show you the practical level of, from our perspective, and I'm not a developer, I can show you how a developer can access it, test it, place an order into your ERP system, but also how, from an overview and from maybe looking at some kind of just briefly talking about maybe one or two success stories, how some customers have integrated this into their own system to automate it, to the point where, when to run through the process, of when the API is called or accessed, that feeds their system saves all that content, and then it's ready for their customers to use and to sell, and they have an e-commerce site that's populated with products and content and stock and pricing, and how their own kind of third-party developers have set up a system in conjunction with the API to make it more business automated. How the information is retrieved and passed in the API, how you could maybe test it yourself. You know, if you have in-house tech teams, or if it's something as a business owner you want to get your hands dirty and kind of test this out yourself, or if it's just all handled kind of out of the house by you know, a third-party developer agency or something like that, which that's kind of what we recommend anyway. After your own developer completes integration, how this can work for you on a practical level. Observe how an order is placed into an ERP. For the purposes of today, we're just going to be using our own SAP Business One remote system, so we can see how that hits the back end of like our web shop, and then how we can jump on to that SAP system, and then also look at that order hitting as a sales order. It's the same process if it was any of the other ERP systems we connect onto. It just so happens to be that for the purposes of this, we just happen to be using SAP Business One. And how support broadly works for the API, because you know, you're a web shop customer or a pocket shop customer or sales rep, you obviously have access to our support desk, and our support team help with day-to-day queries and questions and raising concerns. How that really works with the JavaScript API as well. Cool. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. So I suppose the first thing I will do is I'll just stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to pull up just a couple of pages on, you know, practicalities of when we look at a catalog, why this might be of benefit. So yeah, if the API is a tool that can offer you and your customers. So like I mentioned, the main thing to note is, if you have a catalog, I'm on our demo system here, for example, and I'm on our demo system here, and as we can see here, if I look at this this system here in our catalog, let me see, we have 471 products. Now, I suppose 471 products could be something that's manageable, and that's assuming that you know, if you had, presumably as a wholesaler, you're going to have a lot more products than 471. You know, so let's kind of up the ante. You know, we have, if we 471 products, and those 471 products are medical products, or if they're nutritional products, food, each of those products are going to have some sort of data sheets or specs, you know. So if it's a case where you have a technical specification on a product, you know, what's the height, what's the width, what's the weight. If it has, you know, tires, just to give you an example, if you're a tire reseller, you have about 20 different things that you need to display as a wholesaler on those products. If you're somebody selling medical products, you have to be very, very stringent and careful about what you're displaying on those products. If you have a customer who's a retailer of those products, they're either going to the effort of manually getting, you know, product information off of your site, or another source of information, source of truth for that information, to add on to their product, their e-commerce site, to add a price on, to then copy an image from somewhere to put it up, or maybe you're sending a one-off export to them, which you can do obviously from the back end of the site to facilitate some things, like your content. You'd need a separate export for technical specifications, and it's not going to be in the format that probably their own e-commerce system uses. The same would be the case for product options, paired products, for kind of anything really that you have in here, where you could export the majority of the content for the product to a customer, but there's still going to have to be a human element where they manually have to collate all this data into one. And because the pricing isn't stored on the web shop, it's retrieved from your ERP and displayed in the web shop, the pricing would still need to come from your ERP system. So you're taking another system, joining it onto this and onto this and onto this, and then providing it to one customer. And even then it just gets messy. Perhaps as a one-off, but do that on 3, 4, 5, 6, 20,000 products gets extremely awkward and bamboozling for anyone to manage. The reason why the API is helpful is you're giving somebody an endpoint. And by the way, all of these terms that I'm just going to talk here, I'll talk more about this at the end in our support part of the webinar. All this information is here and defined in our Aphix Assist page over what is an API, what is the customer, what is the endpoint, what is the ERP, all those sort of things. So we do get into the nitty gritty of it. So I just don't want to say these things and then not say that there's not somewhere where they can be explained. But yeah, we have an endpoint that's accessed by you or set by your own developer who will work, or like your developer, but maybe the developer for your customer's e-commerce site. Presumably, if it's a Shopify system or a Magento system or something like that, something that's very much retail focused, they'll probably, unless they're setting this up in-house, they'll likely have went to an agency of some sort and they've created the website and set it up, and it's kind of working how it's working. If that agency has in-house JavaScript developers, we're of the opinion now after this many years that it shouldn't take a crazy amount of experience to use our API. It's technical, but it's not kind of bang your head against the wall technical. Anyone with JavaScript proficiency should be able to access the endpoint, which I'll show you now in a moment, load up the products, feed it into some sort of database. And on a lot of these platforms like Shopify, there's a tool that you can like connect to an API feed. So a lot of those things are kind of preset in. And then it's really just about mapping fields. They map a product description on our feed into like the Shopify field, and the technical specifications get fed into the technical specifications over here. We call categories. Shopify call them collections. So they're just mapping one thing to another based off of different parameters. And then your price comes across as well, specific to you. So what comes across on that feed is the price that your customers pay you for their products. So, on their own third-party system, they'll have to set their own price. They'll get their cost price, but then they'll have to do some sort of, some sort of kind of development query to apply a margin. Again, presuming whatever e-commerce suite that they use, it's going to be, maybe pre-built into it, or that it's something that such an agency would have to kind of work out for them. But the customers that we have to date who do this, who use our API, have had kind of no issues in regards to how that's set up. It's not directly supported by ourselves. It's just we give you the price, and then what you do with the price is kind of up to them. And yeah, so that also comes with all the stock. So the benefit is that from the day to day, if you have a merchant or sorry, if you have a customer of yours, after the integration has taken place, we'll have it set up so that your ERP will have its information copied across to us. The API user or your customer will have access to that feed. When they take out a license, they'll be given an endpoint or a series of endpoints and documentation that we'll walk through with them or their developers. Then when they call those endpoints, they'll retrieve all that information based off of the last time that we would have taken that from your ERP. And once that occurs, whenever they call that endpoint, that'll feed into their e-commerce suite. So it will keep their e-commerce site as up to date with pricing, stock, and content as much as we take that from your system. So that's the only real element that we have to kind of mostly talk to, but with maybe converse with you guys, because if it's done once a day, there's no point in them doing it more than once a day. If it's done 3 times a day, then they can be told you can do it 3 times a day, and then you'll start to see some differences in stocks, you know, so that things are kind of kept in line. So if that's automated and set up to the point where it's scheduled and there's a process put in place by them, they'll just have a full e-commerce site that's auto-populated with thousands of products manually without any human to do anything other than watch it happen. From the ordering process point of view, we have an endpoint that you can place an order with. That can be done in a multiple amount of ways. Either we have some customers who they'll take orders off, you know, throughout the day on their e-commerce suite, and periodically, however they want, they'll have some sort of user interface or some program. I'll give you an idea of just a free one that we can use here that you can use yourself, where they can build the orders themselves and then just send the orders across to you, the merchant. So they'll have some sort of user interface program. They'll see their orders on their e-commerce panel and then send them across, and then they'll use us as the intermediary, but pass into your ERP system, taking again out the need for a salesperson to process an order over the phone or by email. It's in the same way that your web shop places the order into your ERP system. It's just using us again, our JavaScript API, as the middle person here to do that. And from the point of view of the orders going in, that again, we've had examples of before where some of your customers have set up some really good steps and some kind of good automation as well, where, and again, this is probably a conversation for like your customers and their developers to have a conversation around this, because it's not really something that's in our hands. But some good examples before are when if somebody has like a bespoke e-commerce website, it could be automated that when your customer's customer is checking out on said website, when they check out and pay, rather than that order going to, you know, your customer to be able to kind of send it through later on, you could connect their checkout directly to the endpoint for placing an order into your ERP system. So essentially it means that the very end user who's placing an order on the e-commerce site, you know, buys their clothing or whatever the case might be, or the medical products, hits checkout, hits place order, pays, and then the order from there goes directly to your ERP system, saving the retailer the need to kind of process them as they go on the fly. But again, that's just by the developer being kind of smart with using the documentation that we provide. So I'm just going to run through something here very quickly. So when we, in the back end of the web shop here, under customers, you'll notice that under product lists, I have a list called default. Now this is set to be a default list for guests, B2C, and customers, not on any other list. We have something that we talked about on other webinars. But on this list, there's only like 4 products and no categories, but it's set to be applicable to the retail customer code and this other code. What that's saying is when that customer logs in, all they can buy are those products. Now, if I take a look at what you're presented, just so it makes more sense, when you take out a license, what you're presented with is a document like this. This is the table of contents that has all the kind of technical information and the overview of the API, the catalog API, and we go through a run through of, and we'll do this with like a nominated developer that your customer has that they want to talk to us in a consultation. So we'll run through the documentation of how it works, but ultimately what you're presented with at the end after like the how to connect is the live credentials and if they're applicable, a sandbox credential. It's presented in 2 formats, one as a JSON endpoint for products and an XML endpoint for products. The same is there for categories and to place an order. So if I was to paste this into the browser and then just into just a normal browser, I need to have a username and a password. Those are the things that we would give you once the license is issued. But it's essentially structured like this. It's just, it's either an XML feed or a JSON feed. There we go, loaded up. So it loads up a document tree like this here. And then I said I'd change the language, so that's XML, JSON. So it loads up the API there, and you can see there just on the URL that it shows like language equals English, depending on what languages your web shop is supported on. If you have a language for English, German, French, whatever the case might be, that can be used as well. So if you have different translations in the web shop for products in Dutch or German, or again, whatever the language might be, you change the endpoint to reflect that, and then the language will change. Again, what you've gone to the effort of creating your products in terms of the content over a period of time. Now, this looks like a pretty small feed, and this is really just for testing, nothing more. You wouldn't really ever practically need to do this in a browser. I'm going to open up a program now in a moment so you can kind of see this in terms of how a developer might test this out and how you can still test it yourself. But you can see here we have, the product code, customers, if there's a custom code for your customer that'd be applicable, the name of the product, the description, if it's in stock, if it's on order in the ERP, if there's a currency, what the minimum quantity might be. I know that the price here is coming up as 0. I think it's just our test system, the way we have it configured. It's set up for like multiple ERPs, and unfortunately it wasn't able to display the price here in this feed. But depending on the customer code, it'll be, customer code is GBP, or customer code is currency code is euro, and then the pricing. If there's any images that are there, those images are populated as well. So if you have multiple images on a product, see there, paste in the image, up comes the image for the product. So all that content is there. If there's any categories or as you can see, this product is in multiple categories. A web shop, you may have noticed this or not, but in the back end of the web shop, if you click on a category, so you see up in the address bar there, it has an ID. Doesn't really mean much to you, but every category has an ID. So the way we do this is on the API feed, we don't display the category information here on the product feed. We give a second endpoint. So if I duplicate this here and then change the endpoint to instead be list products, it is list categories. So it's just the difference here is that it's probably fits onto, again, depends on the amount of categories you'll have, but it'll be the ID and the name, the ID, the name, the ID, the name, and it'll just keep going alphanumerically kind of down the whole way through the feed. Excuse me. Sorry, numerically down through the feed. The reason is that, again, from somebody who is using this feed, they'll be mapping, this won't be down to you, but they'll be mapping each ID to each category. So they build a set of categories on your e-commerce, on your customer's e-commerce site using the IDs and the categories from both feeds. You don't have to, but it makes more sense to be able to do that. Again, kind of taking away that adding in some automation into it. If I was to, as I kind of alluded to here, this product list, I only have a couple of products in here. So on that API feed that we just looked at a moment ago, all those products are only there. They're the only ones that are on this feed. And the reason is, if you had a customer who was region locked in terms of their products, so if they had, you know, again, we'll use maybe like the medical or pharmaceutical kind of side of things, if they were restricted to be able to sell products based on their locale, and you didn't want to give them a feed of everything, if they have a product list called that customer, and if you specifically set the products or categories that only they should see, in the same way that if they logged onto your web shop as a customer, they only see a boxed off version of the products that they can sell, the same thing would be available in the API. So we can see there, you know, that result was, what are we getting? Yeah, four products. I'm able to scroll up and down pretty quickly there. But if I was to add back in those categories to that product list, so I'm saying that default list again, so it's not a default list, but I'm saying the categories are computing, 4K TVs, gaming, clear my cache. When I go back into the feed here, now you can see that's an awful lot longer, because now it has access to all the 471 products that are visible on the web shop. And again, it is only the ones that are visible. If there's products that you've discontinued and they're invisible, they won't be available in the API. So you can see it has all the variables of some products, like there's, I think it's probably on a laptop, and it's showing off the different specifications and attributes for that product. It might look like it's very awkward to deal with now in that sort of context, but if your developer maps all of those fields and prerequisites and looks for everything to map, that's a name and a value and an attribute, that all just gets mapped into your own system, taking all that manual approach away from you and your sales team. So if I was looking at this in like, nobody would expect you to be kind of you as a business owner to be able to kind of manage this, or to have to manage this. But how it actually works is, if I take something like, this is a program called Postman. It's free. It's just it's an API requisition program that anyone can get for free. Chances are maybe your agency developers might use something similar to this, but the likelihood is that this is really just for testing. They'll probably have something that after a test is done, they'll have some sort of process to take the feed, which is get products and get categories, and then they'll be able to map up that process using some sort of query, so that everything becomes more automated. But getting access is the main thing. So on Postman, for example, you kind of create your calls in here, the username and password and endpoint. There's the endpoint that we literally just spoke of a moment ago. The username and password is set under authorization. I'm not going to show you the R one here, but it's done under the parent. If I was looking at get products, for example, when you put in, depending on the URL structure, I've just put in this this URL, it's automatically found what the query parameters would be, so you haven't done anything. So once it's the same as the browser, you're putting in a URL, you're setting what the username and password is under authorization. As I said, that one there, it's just set to do a thing called inherited from the parent being this one here. And then I hit send, and then it makes a query to our platform and pulls back with all that information. And then however that needs to be pulled in to whatever system, that will get posted out into whatever system that it needs to be posted out to. So, and it's much the same for the categories as well. And then you can change the URL structure as well, where if you want to paginate through pages, if there's like 20,000 products, you can paginate through specific pages by going page 1, page 2, page 3, or add on the page limit to be, I think the maximum amount of products that can be returned on a single page is 250. So if you set it to anything higher than 250, it's just going to return back 250. The systems that it can connect to, there's no real limitation in terms of the system that it can connect to. We've had customers before use our API, not even for e-commerce purposes. We've had a customer of ours before, and they had a marketing company, and but they change the images all the time for promotional purposes, like very, very, very frequently, and the content very frequently. So what they wanted was to have access to an endpoint themselves, because they had built up this marketing system over a long number of years, so that when they onboarded customers, it connected onto a lot of these different social feeds, and then automatically would kind of post information about them, periodically, based off of whatever their business plan was. But the idea was that they needed a complete feed of all the products, the product codes, the pricing, and the images. And again, not to have to go, they were going back to the merchant every day saying, hey, can we have 20 images that you've changed, and can we have this, and can we have that, can we have this? And it was very awkward and time consuming. So it worked out perfectly for them. Once there's a system that can connect, that can retrieve information via an endpoint and a username and a password, there's nothing really that it can't connect onto. In theory, we've another customer as well, actually. It's not e-commerce, as in the end user isn't e-commerce. They have like a part system. They're a retailer. They sell products in a retail environment, probably online as well. But it's meant for like bring your, I think it's for car parts actually. You bring your car in and get it serviced, but all the parts that they have to sell, they have a parts shop as well as an auto repair center. So what they do is they have a till system or a POS system of some description, and that POS system has a method of connecting via an endpoint and a username and a password. So our customer provides that information using the JavaScript API to their customer. I'm not sure who pays the license, but I know that the return and business process and improvement is so much better for them, because again, it limits the amount of like pick up the phone, email the merchant to see if something is in stock, or manually check the website. They can just see the feed. I think it's done, I'm not sure the frequency, but it's done pretty regularly. But they can, within a very low margin of error, be confident that the pricing and products in stock that they have on their POS system is pretty accurate. And they just work away, get on with their business, and that's it. Life is easy. Primarily, it is an e-commerce site of some description that we connect onto, that it connects onto, but there's no real limitation. So I'd say if you're curious, or if you have customers who've asked you how they can improve, how they could get that information quicker, or if you're getting badgered too much for this information, talk to us, and then we can maybe provide a solution. That's probably the best way forward in that. In terms of placing an order in, this is the really cool thing. So again, if you're taking 10, 15, 20 orders a day, well, I was about to say it's not maybe of great benefit, but you know, 20 orders a day could be awkward to do, as in if your retailer was going onto your site and making those orders to fulfill orders on their retail, their retail site, from their retail site onto your B2B site, that could be awkward. But I'm more talking about like the high volume ones, where if you had, you know, we've one merchant who has, it could be 300 or 400 orders in a day, if not more. It depends, and that's coming from multi-channel. So what they do is they have multiple customers who have API feeds, and sometimes they still go on to the web shop as customers, and they place an order, and that's absolutely fine. But primarily, we can see, when we look into their management interface, we can see an order type of credit API. For anyone here who knows, who has multiple kind of payment options in their web shop, you'll have order on credit, pay by Stripe, pay by Relex, pay by PayPal, you know, and then the list goes on. Credit API is another option as well. So if we take a look at the back end here of this demo web shop, these are just a couple of recent orders that I would have placed myself. You can see these last orders, order on credit, sales rep, that's credit app, and then credit API. So we can see here the order confirmation gets generated. The order got sent, the email confirmation got sent to me as the customer. Depending on how you're set up, the confirmation can kind of go to the end user, like to the merchant who's placing the order, or to the retailer who's placing the order, or you, that's the merchant. So again, it's kind of, you can, depending on what you want, let us know, and then we can kind of set it up to do either way. That's just an example one, like I said, where I've just entered in some kind of basic information. So let's say, for example, we'll take a look at some of the products that we have online here. So I'm a customer, I'm on the demo site here. I can see here, there's a product here that's say? It's £461. It's a Sony TV. What do we have? 3515 is the SKU. So I'm going to choose my place order endpoint. So I'm going to order 50 of those. It's another product here. I'm going to stick in a different SKU actually. Let's get 1500F. And we're going to order one of those. And we're going to order, so I'm going to put in my contact name, phone number, email address. I'm going to leave the postcode there. The notes will be ordered at 11:59 for webinar. So doing this, we can see that I've set the format as JSON. I've added it in. This is all done from like your documentation. When you select raw format, you're just pasting in this information you would have already received, or rather your developers would have set up to be automated from the documentation that we would have provided. So again, this is all, once you build it up and test it, or your developer sets it all up to test, once it's in place and it's tested and it's verified, it'll just work how it's supposed to work henceforward. It's not going to change in any sort of way. So I am just going to open up my remote desktop. Before I place the order. Yeah, I suppose this will be familiar for anyone who uses SAP, and if not, well, you just have to bear with us. So on SAP, and I'm not a super user of SAP, by the way. So I'm just going to open up sales orders. I'm going to jump to the end so we can just see like the most recent one that I would have placed. So I'll give that a sec. There we go. So that's the one I think I placed earlier on today. So that's the last one. That's 10 of those and 20 of those. And we can see, first of all, £461 and £179 matches. £461 and £461, and then the next product, 1500B, £179. And then the ERP just takes over the way it does. It places it in with the PO number that I set in. Yeah, and then any notes or logistical information, there's the address that I popped in. Yeah, anything in general that and then there's the remarks that I put in, leave at the back door. So again, it just treats it the same way as you would a web shop order. Now, if I place the same order now, so imagine from the perspective of the retailer, I've gotten my feed throughout the day, I've taken in my products, my content, my categories, all that sort of stuff. I'm now at the point where either maybe I just periodically log on to my Postman or to some other sort of system where I can build the order, or you have a developer who's really on the ball, who's automated your checkout on your third-party e-commerce site to act as the endpoint, so that when that order is placed, it just zips across in the way that I'm going to do now, just showing you in terms of like the nuts and bolts sort of stuff. So all I'm going to do is hit send. The documentation explains this, but the code 200 just means success. 400 means fail, and then it'll usually give you a reason as to why you failed. It's usually down to like mistyped product code or something like that in the order detail, you know, something that doesn't exist in the ERP anymore. But the idea is, again, if the product code is on the feed, then the product code is visible. So the product code should be available. So the product should be okay for you to order. Do you know what I mean? So one hand kind of washes the other here. It tells you what the order ID is, 1798. So if I go into the back end of the web shop, into all orders, 1798 is the order ID. Nice fat 23 grand order is submitted. And if I jump back onto SAP, just close that sales order. It's probably a better way to do this. And if I click on the last data record, there's the one that I just ordered. So, and then there's the badly misspelled remarks down the bottom, the logistics of the address, all that sort of stuff comes over. So again, treat it like web shop in the way that all that information gets populated and fulfilled. In terms of support and documentation, so there's an element of like, look, we can kind of discuss it at more length when you're talking to support or sales, but I suppose the general term is, yes, we support any product that we have a license for. It's really just for you as the merchant to know where that support ends and doesn't. You know, if your customer's e-commerce site suddenly, like, there's a problem with the pricing, or that the stock is wrong or something like that, by all means they can use you as an intermediary if you want. Probably, you know, that's leave that up to you. Or they can approach our support desk in the same way that you would approach our support desk, and query that information. Of course, you know, depending on the level of severity of the problem, you know, it'll be triaged as such. But if it's, you know, something on their, you know, on their Shopify site, that there's something wrong with their, kind of that's not API related, well, we can't really help with that. But certainly, if they ask us a question related to the API, it'll be answered in line with our SLA. Like I said earlier on, we do have a general approach here on our documentation hub of what the API is, what the definitions are, and then a lot of those key items, if you were there to browse through their documentation hub, there's quite a lot of web shop guides that are applicable that might explain like the technical specifications, the categories, like what they are and how they're generated. But essentially, what your customer should really observe is, if they went onto your web shop and seen your stuff, they should go onto their e-commerce site and in general see that stuff there. And that's really it in a nutshell. That's it broadly. Hope I didn't you know, hope that made sense, and that you can kind of take some information away with you. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, and then we'll start taking some questions. Just 1 second. No, so we have one here from Alistair. Alistair's just wondering what's the rough cost of a license for each customer. I'd say, Alistair, the best thing is if you come send an email to me or to our sales team, if you do it to sales@aphixsoftware.com or cdunphy@experlogix.com, and we'll have a conversation on that, if that's okay. And Dara is asking, how can this be integrated with WordPress? All of our B2B customers use WordPress. The specifics of WordPress, I'm not sure. So a WordPress site, it's a good question. With WordPress, if it's probably like if you're using an agency, Dara, if they've built up a system of allowing their customers to use WordPress, it's kind of has to be integrated. It has to be allowable and integratable with the tools that WordPress provide. So if it's on a platform, like I use Shopify as an example, and you're on purely just because, like, when you're in the back end of Shopify, there's like I forget what it's called, but there's like a tab where you can just like connect to external source or connect to an external API. I forget the exact name of it, but essentially, at least you just get the data in. Like, you put in an endpoint, you put in a username and a password, and then it gets the feed. How you manipulate the feed to the different fields on Shopify is kind of more of when somebody has access to like the theme of the Shopify suite, and it's the same for Magento and kind of BigCommerce, or indeed if it's just like a custom solution or custom website that's been configured for somebody. For WordPress, I'm not sure, but I'd say the agency who manages those customer sites, it's probably best to kind of have a chat with them, because it will be more asking WordPress, I have an API connection, how do I feed that information into WordPress? And then they should be able to tell you if at all. Don't think we've any more. It's okay. Okay, well, look, hopefully I answered a lot of questions. Again, the reason why we covered this is that these kind of seem to come through sales and support sometimes, that maybe there was no direct source of truth to answer all of these, that was explaining all these questions. So hopefully that can give a bit of confidence and show how this product and service works. If there is any follow-up ones that you're just not thinking about now, by all means, send me an email at cdunphy@experlogix.com or to sales@experlogix.com or sales@aphixsoftware.com. So yeah, thanks for joining us for today's webinar. We'll be back next month with another webinar, so stay tuned, and yeah, thanks for attending. Thank you.